That's great. So good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Tansey from Silver Sands, and welcome to our webinar on what's new with Microsoft Teams. Today we'll be covering the latest tips and tricks from Microsoft's recent announcements at Ignite, and covering things such as Viva as well and how that integrates with Teams. Before James does that, I'll just kick off with Silver Sands and a slide and a quick introduction. So we've been in business for 34 years and we're a professional services organisation specialising in Microsoft consultancy and support to the enterprise market. So at the top, the very large circle at the top, we run with Microsoft 365, which comprises of three key components. Firstly, all the applications you're used to, such as Teams, SharePoint and OneDrive. The second component of M365 is Windows 10 for your operating system. And the third component is enterprise mobility and security for protecting all your endpoints and devices. The larger circle, so the bottom left, is the Power Platform. We've seen a lot of rapid growth for business applications, reporting and dashboards using Power Apps, Power Automate and Power BI and Dataverse as well. At the bottom right, the large circle there, so we deliver and manage both on-prem infrastructure solutions and cloud infrastructure solutions using Azure. And the smaller circles just around the edges, the three smaller ones, we work with identity, governance and security. And they're all crucial aspects of a technical implementation to enable a seamless and protected end user experience. So linking all of those circles together is the support banner. We offer anywhere from the reactive support through to the proactive and the managed support services. And at the heart of what we do is people and devices. We deliver Microsoft approved user adoption and change management to embed that technology within your organization. So that's Silver Sands in a slide. I'd like to welcome James Mallalieu, our principal consultant, to kick off the webinar. James, over to you.
Thanks, Mike, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session. I'm delighted to see so many people have joined. And what a great session we've got. So Microsoft have announced many things for Microsoft Teams over the last few months, and particularly at the recent Ignite conference. In the time I've got available, unless I speak incredibly fast, I am not going to cover every single thing they've announced. So what I've done is picked those things that I think have the broadest applicability to the widest audience. So I'm hoping that there's something in here that resonates with each of you. I'm hoping there's some things in there that hopefully excite you. There's many things in here that excite me about Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to crack on. If you've got any questions as I go through, just add them into the chat and we'll try and answer them as we go through. But as Mike said, I've left a little bit of time at the end. So if you want to wait to the end, then please feel free to do so. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, very exciting, Microsoft Teams Connect. And I believe this is a fundamental change to the way we think about the structure and the use of channels within a particular team. So let me kind of elaborate. Currently, when you have a team, you structure the team using channels, and channels are used to divide up your conversations in content into kind of areas of discussion. Now, Microsoft released the concept of private channels a while ago, and that effectively allows you to create a channel within a team that only a subset of the team members would have access to. Now contrast that with a standard channel where everyone who has access to the team has access to that channel. What they're now introducing is this concept of a shared channel. So when you create a channel, you'll get the option of standard, everyone in the team has access to, private, a subset of members of that team have access to, and shared. This is the interesting one. It effectively allows you to create a channel and share it with people who don't have access to the rest of the team. So that creates some interesting scenarios, but let me just talk you through and show you the scenario in action. So I'm creating a new channel for this team, and in this case, I'm going to make it a shared channel. Now, when I select to make it a shared channel, it's going to say, okay, who do you want to add to have access to that channel? And these could be people obviously within the team, but the interesting thing here is people outside of the team, and particularly Grady here. So Grady is someone outside of the organization. So let's see what happens when we create this channel. Channel gets created and, well, it looks like a normal channel. Nothing exciting there, except what you will see is it's very small there, a little icon to indicate it's a shared channel. Now you might think, okay, great. Well, two things here. Firstly, that channel has been shared with people who don't have access to this team, which means when they come in and see the channel, when they come in to see the channel, they will only see that channel. They won't see the other channels within the team. But the bit that's really exciting for me is, as an external user, I will have access to that team and that shared channel from my primary tenancy. Now, this may mean nothing to you unless you're used to having to switch tenancies in teams because you're collaborating with another organization. What this effectively means is that while I am in my primary tenancy, my Silverstone's tenancy, I can have access to that shared channel that relates to a team that exists in my guest organization's tenancy. And effectively, it means that I'm not going to miss those notifications and those conversations because I have to constantly change the context of teams by switching in and out of channels. So this is a big deal. It's a big deal from a usability point of view. And I think it's a big deal for the way we think about structuring channels. And I'm in two minds about this. Private channels create a lot of complexity behind the scenes in terms of information governance. And I have a feeling that this is going to create an equal amount of complexity. But as a consultant, that's what I like, complexity, because that's how we make money. So if it was all very easy, there'd be no money to be made. But from a usability point of view, I'm really excited about this and think this is a great step forward. Now, you'll see in all of my slides here an indication of when this is going to launch. A couple of caveats on this. This is when Microsoft say they will start rolling it out. My experience tells me that if it says Q2, that means they may start rolling it out in April, May, or June. They will primarily hit targeted release tenants first. So, take this with a bit of pinch of salt, but at least it gives you some indication. Okay, so next thing I'm going to talk about is channel apps. Now, keeping with this theme of talking about the channels within a team, channel apps allow you to bring additional content, processes, and capabilities into a channel within a team. And two of the ones that I want to just call out are available today, but I think sometimes they get missed in all the bigger announcements, but they are in themselves very useful. So we're going to talk about the first one, which is Calendar, a calendar app. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, that when you schedule a meeting within Microsoft Teams, you have the option of making it a channel meeting or making it a non-channel meeting. And for anyone that's followed the change in meeting recordings, you'll be aware that if it's a channel meeting, the meeting recording gets stored in the team that it relates to, the team that the channel relates to. If it's a non-channel meeting, it gets stored in the OneDrive of the person who clicked the record button. So I'm always saying to clients, look, if you're having meetings and they relate to a team you have, please, 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 please use channel meetings, because then the meeting recording gets recorded in the appropriate place. But what the meeting tab allows us to do is, you can see in this channel, we have a load of meetings. We have a daily stand-up that happens every day at midday. We have a every Tuesday sales briefing. We have an every Wednesday H2 goals meeting. And I kind of want an easy way for people coming into this channel to see the schedule of the meetings. So I can click the add channel option, and I'll see a new option here called channel calendar. And I'm just going to call it calendar. I'll post it into the channel so my colleagues know it's there. And what this will display is the meetings that are scheduled for that channel in a calendar view. So it's a great way for someone to come in to see what meetings are going on in this channel. So that's the first thing. The second tab I want to highlight is the new whiteboard tab. Now, if anyone's known me, been involved in any meeting with me before, it's not a meeting unless I've used whiteboard. So they're great for meetings, but then they effectively work for the purpose of that meeting. But what happens if I use a whiteboard meeting throughout the course of a project? Well, then by adding the tab, I add a whiteboard into my channel. And this will give me the functionality of the whiteboard, not just within the context of the meeting I'm having, but within the context of that channel. So it's persistent. So this will spin up the whiteboard, and obviously I can start doing what I like doing, which is drawing shapes, drawing faces, and doing other stuff with whiteboard. Now, it's pretty good experience within the browser or within the Teams app, but honestly, I use it from the desktop app a lot because you just get more functionality. You don't have to do that, but it's a pretty useful tool. So,
James, there's a couple of questions coming on that point, really. If you're using the Teams channel calendar, is there a way that you can send it to specific people within that team instead of sending it to everyone within that team?
yes. So when you schedule a meeting, so when it's a channel meeting, you can elect to send the meeting invite to people. So if I don't elect to send it to anyone within the channel, everyone within that channel will be able to join that meeting, but they won't necessarily be notified that that meeting takes place. So if I actually want certain members of my team to have this meeting in their calendar and I want them to respond to say they're attending, then just put them in.
Perfect, thank you. And a couple of other questions, if I may. So is there a limit of the number of shared channels that you can have, much as there is with private channels?
Yes. I don't know what that limit will be, but there is a limit, give or take 200 channels within a team. And to be honest, if you think about the user experience for channels, I just go back to my team. You have this concept within a team of channels that appear to everyone and channels that I, as a user, elect to show. So I might say show this, but you can see the let's say the design channel. As the owner, I'm going to say, no, everyone has to see that. So there's a finite amount of channels that you want to display here, because once you get, too many channels, it just becomes pretty much unusable, which is hence my point that I think the way that we think about structuring teams in terms of channels, particularly with the concept of shared channels, we still need to be mindful of not creating a team that's some sort of Uber team that tries to tackle too many scenarios in a single team.
Is it possible to change a regular channel into a shared channel after it's been created, or is that function just stuck?
No, well, I'm going to say I've not seen that capability, but I would say probably not, because it's the same principle of a private channel. Once it's a private channel, it's a private channel. And the reason for that is the way private channels work behind the scenes. And I'm imagining that shared channels are going to work in a similar way. But I can't confirm that. Okay. So let me crack on. So another app that's building apace is the Teams Approval app. Now, this has been released, I think, earlier in the year, and effectively it kind of brings all the great functionality of Power Automate and approvals, but puts it in the hands of an end user. And what I mean by that is, if I want to start the approval process for a given document, I really don't want to be thinking about Power Automate, and in fact most users wouldn't be thinking about. So if I've got a document I want to send for approval, so if we go down here and I think I've got a new report and I want to send it for approval, just down here you'll see a little icon called approvals. So I can click that and this will pop up the approval request tab. So I can say, I don't know, monthly sales figures. I can enter the person who I want to approve it. I'm going to enter Adele. I'm going to put some details. I'm going to enter an attachment. So this allows me to pick a file from pretty much anywhere in my environment. So apologies, this isn't a sales document, but I'm just going to kick this one off anyway. Click send. And I've just kicked off an approval process without the word Power Automate entering my head. Now Adele's going to be notified, and Adele will get one of these, what you're seeing here, these adaptive cards that allows Adele to, in context here, approve or reject it. Now that's one way of doing it. The other way is there's an approvals app, which if you're not aware, it should be in your environment. If you just go in and click add app and type approvals, it'll be there. And this approvals allows me as an individual to see approvals I've sent and approvals I've received. So if we click in sent, what we should see, there's the monthly sales figures ones that I've just sent, and it's currently being sent to Adele. I can click into it, see what's happening with it, cancel the request or accept the request. It's quite a nice feature. But this is getting extended. So one of the things that is happening is Microsoft are going to allow you as an organization to create a set of organization-wide approval templates. So you can see this screen here, organization-wide, and this is the administrator. So these are organization-wide templates that are available. So when someone says kick off an approval, there is a prescribed process there in place. So if I click new template, it says, okay, do you want to build one from scratch, or do you want to use one of the ones that Microsoft provides? And they're providing some common ones like leave request, overtime. I don't think some of these are standard ones, but you get the idea. So I'm going to say, yep, I'm going to build one, and I'm going to make it organization wide. And then you get this form designer. Now the form designer allows you to configure the information that you want to capture when you initiate the approval process. And for anyone who's used Microsoft Forms, hopefully you think, that looks very familiar, because it's kind of the same, similar sort of technology. So I can add in a number of bits of information that I want to capture when someone initiates an approval process. I can then configure how the workflow is going to work and then publish it. Okay. Now, from an end user point of view, they go into the approvals tab. They can say, okay, I want to start a new approval request, and I'm going to use this one, which is a discount request. So this is a, for a salesperson to say, I would want to discount a particular activity for a client, and the template's there. And you see the fields it's asking for me here. These are the fields that would have been configured in that form that I previously showed. So the customer name, discount amount, the date. I initiate the process, and then here you can see it sitting in my pending approvals inbox, as it were, to say this one's currently pending and it's with these two people. So I'm kind of quite excited about this. These are quite simplistic. So if you're building complex Power Automate flows, this doesn't replace the need for this, but this is really about those simple approval processes where you want to get a document approved, perhaps digitally signed. There's a couple of people involved in it, and you just want it easy for people to use.
There's a couple of questions on that point. So Diane was saying, is there a central repository for these approvals? I think what you've just said there says there is, but are they just limited to specific teams, or can they be organization wide?
No, so you can target an approval template to a given team or organization wide. And obviously the thing about this is that you can initiate a process, an approval process, outside of the context of a team. You don't have to be within a team to do it.
Okay, and a couple more questions, James. So who can see the approvals? Is it just the requester and the approver?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're thinking about how do you have oversight over this, there is some questions that this isn't really about creating a, very mission critical process for dealing with, let's say, incoming insurance claims where you've got hundreds of thousands of these things. This is aimed at the end user type, I'm going to say informal, but relatively ad hoc type process.
Perfect. And just final one, really, can the approvals been sent out to external people or groups to approve?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. You can't currently do it with approvals. Having tried it, it doesn't work. However, because of the way that approvals works with the adapted cards and uses content that can be hosted within Teams, I'm going to go out on a limb and say either that will be available or it's certainly on the roadmap to come.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so it's to do with collaboration. Let's talk about meetings. And it's no surprise that Microsoft have put a significant amount of emphasis on improving the overall meeting experience for Teams. Bearing in mind, most of us find that Teams meeting is as close to physical contact as we get with the outside world at the moment. So I'm going to talk about some of these things. Now, one of the ones I really like is, it's quite a simple thing. that the ability to change the view that you're using is going to move over to the left-hand side. Now, it seems a really minor thing, but many people that I have meetings with aren't even aware that there are options to change the different views they can use throughout a meeting. So having this view switcher, as they call it, over in the left-hand side just means it's not hidden in the more options or the 3 ellipses or the 3 dots. You know, it's a bit more visible to the user. The other one I really like is this thing called gallery on top there. So essentially it moves the gallery of the people in the meeting to the top of the screen. And the reason for that is most of our webcams are on the top of the screen. So when I'm listening to what someone's saying and I'm trying to get visual clues or eye contact, it doesn't help if I'm looking at the bottom of the screen, right? Because my webcam's at the top of the screen. So having the option to move this at the top of the screen is a really good idea, just to help with that visual kind of cues that you see when you're talking and looking at a person. The other thing that they're introducing is the concept of dynamic views. Now, if I'm not aware that Teams supports different views, wouldn't it be fantastic if it automatically adjusts the view I'm seeing based on the context of the meeting? Now, if you're worried that it's going to do what you're seeing in this animated GIF, it's not going to do that. It's not going to be changing every few seconds. But you can see the point here that it's saying, look, if someone's sharing content, then it makes sense to make the content the key point of the session. If there are a lot of people and there's no content being shared, it makes the point of going to the gallery view. And so adapting the view dynamically means people don't have to hunt around to find the best possible view for the context. Teams will attempt to do that for you. Now, another kind of feature that was announced recently, which is imminent, and I'm so disappointed I can't show you this today, but is the PowerPoint Live in Teams. And this comprises of a few different things, so I'm just going to walk you through. So the first thing is the share tray, as it's called, is going to change to become a pop-out here, as opposed to at the bottom of the screen. And it's going to include a couple of new options. Now, the first one is, instead of it saying share PowerPoint, it's going to say PowerPoint Live. This has a couple of important implications. Now, some of you might be aware that when you currently share PowerPoint like this, instead of just sharing it on your desktop, it uploads your PowerPoint deck to the cloud if it's not already there. And it gives actually a much better experience for users, much more performant experience. And when you do this, one of the things that you already have available today is the ability to differentiate between what we call the presenter view and the attendee view. So the presenter gets their slide deck, they get the notes, they get the gallery showing the up and coming slides. So they get this kind of view, whereas the attendee gets the full view. Now, you can do that as of today, but the bit I'm very excited about is this option to use what we call presenter mode. So in presenter mode, you can elect to change the way that you appear when presenting. So at the moment in this session, you've probably got my ugly mug appearing down in the corner of your screen, but it would be more engaging, I feel, perhaps not seeing my face, but putting me over and above the presentation in this sort of context. So you're going to get 3 different options here. You're going to get the standout, reporter, and side-by-side options. And hopefully this will give you an idea of how you can really make presentation type meetings a little more engaging, particularly to allow the presenter to an extent, take better center stage and for you to kind of engage in what they're saying. So this is rolling out. I've said Q1 2021. So on the basis we are already mid-March, then I am confident that this will start appearing before the end of the month because I've seen it, but I'm not confident that everyone will get it before the end of the month. But this is definitely imminent. And the next one, also something close to my heart, is the ability to deliver webinars in Teams. Now, obviously, we're delivering this session as a webinar, but there's a couple of limitations currently with Teams that really mean that it's not that end-to-end webinar experience. So the first thing is, I want to be able to quickly and easily set up a webinar. So wouldn't it be great if there was an option just on my new meeting screen that says, make this a webinar? So that's what we can do. And when we make it a webinar, we get a couple of additional options in configuring the meeting. So is a registration required? Now, obviously, for an internal webinar, you may not want a registration, or you might want people to sign up for it. Certainly for external, it would be great to allow people to register. So if you select the option that registration is required, we again get the ability to configure a registration screen. Now, I can't show you this screen, but essentially this is a public-facing screen that has a link provided to it that you can use in your campaigns to promote the webinar, and it will contain information that you want to capture from the attendee, including custom questions that you might want to ask them, and also some context a bit about the webinar. Now, during the webinar, a feature, and this is actually already available today, is you'll be able to conduct polls. So these sort of polls allow you to do one of two things. They allow you to pop up a poll that people have to actually respond to, otherwise the poll kind of sits on the top of the screen for them until they respond to it. They can be anonymous, you can hide the participant results, a whole load of things you can do with polls throughout the meeting. And then finally, at the end of the webinar, you can get detailed analytics about the people who registered versus the number of people who attended, how they joined the webinar, their join time and leave time, and so on. And if you are using something like Dynamics 365, that information can be integrated with a campaign within Dynamics. And for anyone that's a licensing buff, great news is if you've got any of these licenses here, so pretty much E3 or above, or Microsoft 365 Business Standard or Business Premium, this webinar feature will be available to you free of charge to all of your users who have the appropriate license.
James, a couple of questions there around the difference between Teams webinar and live events. Do you know how they compare?
Well, there's an interesting point. So with webinars now supporting up to 1,000 participants and 20,000 view onlys, there is a question about, well, when would you use a live event? And sort of not to go too deep on this, the way that I position it is a live event is typically used when you need to use increased production values. So you need to use multiple webcams, multiple speakers. You probably, in some cases, will be using a combination of live and pre-recorded content. And you want to have the option for people to be able to stream it on demand. And it's kind of much more for a higher value, production value type scenario, whereas these webinars are lower value to produce. Obviously, the production values of a Silver Sands one is fantastic anyway, but they're not really aimed at the same sort of level. A live event is that high production value corporate event, or a digital event, or that type of thing. That's how I differentiate the difference. Okay, so we've talked a lot about some of the features coming that help and improve our meeting experience. Let's talk about some of the controls that are coming. And for anyone who saw the parish council debacle on YouTube a few months ago, people are becoming sort of quite sensitive to who can join meetings, how you deal with meeting recordings, and what happens during the meeting. So a couple of things here. Invite-only meetings. So essentially, at the moment with a Teams meeting, when you get the meeting invite, you could forward that on to anyone in the world. And the only protection the meeting organizer has is a lobby. Now, the problem is if you always turn a lobby on and you've got lots of people joining, it can be difficult to manage. So there'll be an option when you create a meeting called allow forwarding, okay? And essentially this will prevent users from being able to forward the invite onto other people. There will also be an option in the meeting settings that say only allow people I have specifically invited to join without going into the lobby. So anyone who I've sent an email to, internal or external, they will come straight in. Anyone who I haven't invited, they will be put into the lobby. So that will help those scenarios. The second one is the ability to prevent video sharing. And this is, the picture is very relevant because this has come out specifically from the education space, where you need the ability to prevent an individual or the whole meeting people from sharing their video. So there's nothing worse than an uninvited participant joining a Teams meeting and sharing something inappropriate in their video stream. And this kind of allows you to control it either at an individual level or for the entire meeting. So someone can put their hand up, you as the meeting facilitator can then enable their camera, enable their mic, and then they can come on screen. And the last one is something that's being rolled out at the moment, is that everyone internal person who attends a Teams meeting that's recorded, not a channel meeting, a non-channel meeting, is given view rights to that meeting. But at the moment, they're also given rights to download the meeting recording, the MP4 file. That is being changed. So they will be granted view rights to that meeting, but they will be prevented from downloading that meeting and uploading it into YouTube and creating the latest viral video. So that's going to be changing your environment pretty imminently.
James, this a question there. So a customer has people using Zoom and they can stream live into Workplace. Is this capability coming into Teams, that integration there?
Streaming live into Workplace, that's an interesting point. I would think I don't know about Workplace, but I know if you want to stream live into something, then a live meeting is probably where you want to look at, because that gives you the ability from memory to embed the video stream into another application.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, maybe on the Facebook Workplace, maybe down the line, I guess we'll have a look at the roadmap and we can maybe let you know. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so a couple on security and compliance. I know some people kind of just isn't their favorite subject, but some people it's the most important subject in the world. So I'm just going to briefly kind of mention this. The first one, end-to-end encryption of one-to-one calls. So this effectively means that two people can have a video call that is encrypted end-to-end, which means there's no recording, there's no transcript, no one on this planet can see or hear what is being talked to about that call. Okay, so this can be quite important for some scenarios. Now, just to emphasize here, you will have to decide who can use this capability from an organization point of view, and both participants in the call have to agree for the call to be end-to-end encrypted. If you do use the end-to-end encryption, you can't record it, you can't file share, you can't bring someone else into the call. Microsoft are looking at making this capability available for group calls, but in its first iteration, it is only going to support one-to-one calls. The second thing I want to talk about is guest access reviews. And this is effectively, how do we deal with this conundrum that Teams makes it very easy to collaborate with people outside of the organization, guest users. In fact, more so, since earlier in the year, the default guest sharing setting is enabled for Teams anyway, as it's always been for SharePoint. So people merrily go along their way inviting these guests into their teams. So James from Silver Sands gets invited into a team, and the owner then moves on from that team, and no one really is responsible for making sure that James from Silver Sands doesn't really need continued access for that team. So why is his account still there? Why can he still access it? And this is something called guest access reviews. It's been available for quite some time in Azure AD, but it's actually now specifically got some functionality aimed at SharePoint and Teams. Now, I'm just going to show you this from an end user perspective, not from an admin perspective, but hopefully you'll get the idea. So in my environment, I've set up guest access reviews for a particularly sensitive team. And this sensitive team, I've said that the owner needs to validate every single week that guest access for the users is still required. So they get this email. Please review users' access to the sales and marketing group in Contoso. So it's basically saying, Megan, you're responsible for doing this. You need to validate these people. So I click Start Review. And this will say, these guest users have access. So sales and marketing, this person, James, last signed in January the 20th, 2021. So more than 30 days ago. Recommendation, deny. Oh, they must know me, obviously. But so this then allows the user to have to take action, right? Yes, deny, or deny is recommended, or approve, or actually, I don't really know what to do about this. But that is then a process that is implemented and is automated. So you're pushing the responsibility back to the owners of teams to make the decision of whether these guests should still have access to their team. So this is a really useful feature for preventing your guest accesses just growing. Okay, the last thing, which may or may not be of any interest to people, depending on the size of your organization geography, is multi-geo. So this has been around for SharePoint and Exchange for quite some time, and this effectively allows you to locate the content of people using Teams in terms of private chat and Teams to specific geographic regions. So currently, if your region is, say, the UK, all of your Teams content, give or take, is held in the UK. Whereas what you might want to do is distribute it across the Americas, Asia Pacific, and Europe and the UK, depending on where the employee is actually located. Does require multi-geo licensing. Okay, so for the remaining time in the session, I'm going to talk about Microsoft Viva. Now, this session is obviously about Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to talk about Microsoft Viva in the context of what it means for Microsoft Teams. So you might be aware that Microsoft announced Microsoft Viva last month, and they positioned it as an employee experience platform. So reading between the lines, this is effectively a set of modules that have been designed to address the problem that the pandemic has caused in terms of all of us having to adapt to this hybrid working world. Some of us are working in offices, some of us are working at home, some of us are working remotely all the time, partially. And how do we deal with some of the challenges that face organizations with dealing with their employees, engaging with their employees, allowing their employees to grow and looking after their employees? And this is effectively where Microsoft Viva comes in. Now, just to be clear, it is not a product as such, but it does have licensing implications, no surprise there. So I'm going to walk through some of the aspects of Viva, give you our take on it, and give you the perspective of what it means to Microsoft Teams. So there are 4 modules, and each of the modules addresses a specific part of this kind of employee experience platform. So we have Viva Connections, which is all around the engagement. How do we engage with employees? How do we keep them informed? You can think of that very much like the SharePoint and Yammer of Viva. Insights is around how do we balance the needs of ensuring people are both productive, but also looking after their well-being at the same time. The learning module focuses on making learning and the ability for employees to improve and learn new digital skills, but putting it within the context of Teams so it's accessible. And the final one is topics, which is how do we take all of the knowledge that exists within our organization? How do we make it available to people? And how do we bring our expertise together so it is consumable and findable to people around the organization? Now, one of the things that ties all of these experiences together is that they are primarily accessed through Microsoft Teams. And what we're seeing, not only with Viva, but generally, is organizations are starting to see Teams as the center point or the central piece of their digital experience. We're all kind of working in teams, meeting in teams, communicating in teams, collaborating in teams. So it makes sense, start bringing together other content, other processes, other applications and other capabilities into that Teams experience. So instead of users saying, I'm not sure whether I should be using SharePoint, OneDrive, Planner, this or that app. Users just experience everything through Teams, so we simplify everything for them. Now I'm just going to dive in and talk about a couple of these modules. And I did talk about Microsoft Viva Connections in my What's New in SharePoint session that I did last week, so I'm not going to talk about that too much today. I'm going to put a link to the recording at the end of this session, so if you're interested in Viva Connections, I do a piece on that. But what I will say is between the session last week and today, Microsoft have announced that what they're calling the Teams Viva desktop experience will be available to you at the end of March. In fact, they're very specific. On the 31st of March, you will be able to download the PowerShell script that enables this capability in your tenancy. Now, what does that capability mean? Well, step back slightly. Viva Connections is built upon SharePoint and Yammer, and its purpose is to bring together that intranet experience and that employee engagement experience that you may well already have, but surface it within the Teams interface. So you can see in the screenshot behind here, this is clearly a SharePoint site. And that's a lot to do with what Viva is. It is essentially built upon SharePoint. What the desktop experience for Viva allows you to do is take your SharePoint home site, publish it within Teams, which is what we're seeing here, and therefore make use of the new global navigation system that is rolling out for Teams at the moment. Sorry, for SharePoint at the moment. So you can see here, I've expanded the navigation. I've got all my global navigation settings here. I've got my SharePoint sites that I frequently visit. I've got SharePoint news articles. The search bar in Teams is a SharePoint search bar. It's no longer just Teams specific. I've got a full experience of SharePoint within the Teams experience. So if you're interested in that, catch up on the video that I did last week, or by all means, just reach out and we can talk about that in more detail. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other modules. So I'm going to talk about Viva Learning. So essentially, this is enabling you as an organization to provide a central hub where people can go and access learning material. Now, the learning material comes from not only Microsoft, it can come from yourself as an organization, but it can also come from third-party providers. So be it LinkedIn, be it Pluralsight, and there's a whole load of other people that are allowing their content to be surfaced from the Viva learning experience. Now, a point here, again, it's a team-centric experience. So you're seeing here in the screenshot, this is all being surfaced within Teams, be it from the Teams chat on the mobile app, or be it from the app that will appear in your Teams interface. I can't answer anything about licensing at the moment because I simply don't know. So the learning comprises of kind of three key elements. You can see here, I have a learning app within Teams, and that allows me to see learning that has been assigned to me, learning that is recommended for me, and also learning that is coming from, as I said before, your organization, LinkedIn, or third parties. So you can see all of these tiles here are related to learning modules that have come from one of those providers. And you can see here, here's one that is scheduled for me to do, tells me how long it is, and obviously I can get to it directly from here. Now, if I'm working within a team and there is some learning material that is useful for the people working on that team to have access to, then I can add a tab. There will be an option to add a Viva Learning tab, which is what I've done here. And I can bring together on that tab the courses that are relevant for the people working within that channel to have access to. So I'm looking up courses on leadership here, and I'm just tagging those courses onto the tab. As the owner, I can also assign people these courses to do. So here's the option that says assign, and I select the people that I assign them to, and then I can track which ones they've done, which ones are pending, and obviously take whatever actions required. Now, if you're interested in Viva Learning, there is a public preview which you can sign up for starting in April. If we just switch over and talk about Viva Insights here, this is all about balancing productivity and well-being. And essentially, it's helping both individuals, teams, and the wider organization adapt to this new hybrid working world. And so from an individual point of view, it's about helping me, if I'm working from home, really have that time to disconnect from work at the end of the day, to make sure that I have time to do things as opposed to spend my entire day in Teams meetings. From an organizational point of view, it's about providing some insight into your employees to look at where you need to think about initiatives, comms, and education to help people. And likewise as before, it's a team-centric experience, so you experience it from a user point of view within Microsoft Teams. Now, licensing a little bit complicated. Personal Insights is currently available in preview today. In fact, if you go into your Microsoft Teams and you go into the more options and click Insights, you'll probably find you've got the Insights app there. And if you look at it, this is the first incarnation of this within Teams. This will show you your line manager and encourage you to have one-to-ones with your line manager. And it will show you a list of emails where you've been asked to do something and haven't followed up, or meeting requests where you haven't accepted. In a demo environment, I have none of these things, so it's not really useful. Protect Time allows me to book time in my calendar where I'm not going to be interrupted. So it kind of gives me an idea of where I need to book time in my calendar. Worth checking that out because it's there today. That's free, or currently free, but if you're looking at Manager and Leader Insights, you need a Workplace Analytics license, which is an additional add-on license that none of the existing 365 plans include. Now, where this is currently changing is for Personal Insights, we are getting what's called the new Home tab and the virtual commute. So I'm going to show you a quick video of the virtual commute in a minute, because I think it's a really nice kind of feature. But essentially it allows you to say every day at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, I want a reminder to start my virtual commute. We're also getting this home page. So this home page allows us to send praise to our colleagues. It allows us to see things that perhaps we haven't responded to. So you've got a to-do item here. You've got some time. It's saying book some time, focus time, so you're not interrupted. It's got, you can see here, some integration with Headspace for some meditative type things, and so forth. So the Headspace stuff is coming in the summer, but this home and virtual commute is coming imminently. Now, if we take leaders and managers, sorry, this animation moves terribly quickly, but for a team leader, you're getting information on employee experience, team effectiveness, and outcomes. So one of the things it's looking at is how much time your employees spend working outside of normal office hours. Or it may be how much time they spend outside of meetings, so how much quiet hours or free time they have. Now, important point, all of the data that's aggregated is de-identified. And as someone asked me the other day, well, what happens if I've only got 3 people in the team? It's obvious who it's showing me. There are minimum thresholds, so it won't give you this information unless there's a broad enough set of people to de-identify and anonymize the content. If we take this at the organization level, sorry, these aren't very clear to read, but it kind of rolls this up from an organization point of view, and it's giving you insights into how your organization is collaborating, how, you know, what is happening, and therefore giving you some initiatives that can be taken forward. So what I want to do, and I think this is timely, is that was kind of the last thing I wanted to cover. And I want to run a very short video, it's only 45 seconds, which is the virtual commute. It's the wind down from work. And I think that's probably a nice thing to do at the end of a session. There's some nice relaxing music, even if you're not interested in the content. So let me just play this and then we'll wrap up. Feeling relaxed already. So I thank you very much for your attention. I hope there's some stuff in there that you found useful, you found interesting, and if anything like me, there's some stuff that's quite exciting. If you have any follow-ups or want to find out more, please feel free to reach out to me. Microsoft Roadmap, I've put the links here. These are all great places to get information and content. We are running another seminar 1st of April. My colleague Mark is doing a session on desktop and device management. And if you do want to catch up on the what's new in SharePoint, it's on YouTube. I've put a link down there and you can grab that. So just before we hand over to questions, Mike.
Thanks, James. Can I just say, fantastic webinar, really enjoyed that, very informative, particularly like the bits about the well-being and the LinkedIn learning. I think that's really pertinent at the moment. So yeah, just to highlight, we do offer 4 accelerators around Teams. These are fixed price starters for 10, all around getting up and running with Teams, enhancing security, governance, or compliance. If you are interested in kind of that jump start, please just message in that survey link in the comments form and we can send you over some details. So I'm just going to paste that link again. So it's got the survey, it's got all the future events in there as well. And really, James, just to hand back to you and ask any questions if anyone's got them. So yeah, thank you again.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so if anyone does have any other questions that they want to ask, please feel free, just add them into the chat.
In fact, we had one from Colin around the licensing. So for what license does the end-to-end encryption need, James?
I don't know at the moment, Colin. Apologies. I was trying to find that out. There's quite a lot of information about the end-to-end encryption that's not yet in the public domain, and I couldn't find what the licensing requirement was for it. As soon as I know, I will post something.
There's another question that's just come in. So what's the situation with both meeting recordings and streamed content moving to SharePoint? Direct message there. Yeah,
so hopefully everyone's aware that your meeting recordings, be it non-channel meetings or channel meetings, have moved to SharePoint or OneDrive and SharePoint. And this kind of movement is actually not the end of the story. Effectively, recordings, videos are moving out of Stream and are going to be stored in SharePoint. Essentially, Stream is going to become a desktop application that allows you to edit your videos and see your videos. But in terms of storage, video storage is all moving to SharePoint. Now, anyone that's been around the block for a few years will know that video storage started in SharePoint, then went to Office 365 Video, then went to Stream, and now we're back in SharePoint. So over the last 10 years, we've come full circle. The movement of meeting recordings is happening. And I think you can opt out at the moment if you don't want to use that. But I think by July, you have no choice. The movement of other recordings from Stream, there is no time frame for that. So no need to worry if you're using Stream a lot to host and stream video recordings. Just something to be aware of. That is on the roadmap.
Thanks, James. And this may be another licensing unknown with the end-to-end encryption, but will both parties need that license for the secure encryption? Is that known at this stage?
It's not about licensing, but both parties have to agree and have it enabled. It's not like kind of the, I guess, WhatsApp type thing where it's enabled by default. I think this is, if you're talking about a call with an external party, I think the external party has to have it in their environment, and it has to be agreed by both parties. Not a lot of detail on it at the moment, I'm afraid.
Great, thank you. A question coming in from Chris. So for meeting recordings in OneDrive, can you now get text transcripts that can be edited?
So you should be able to get text transcripts, but they can't be edited. Now, the way that transcripts are presented to you is going to change. I haven't got a screenshot to hand, but in the future, when you go to Teams and you look at the information about a meeting, where it has the meeting recording, there'll be a separate tile next to it that has the meeting transcript. Now, I'm not sure you'll be able to edit them. So one of the common things is the meeting transcripts aren't always perfect. And when it's a video that you want them to be perfect, at the moment, to be honest, you need to take the MP4 out of OneDrive or SharePoint and put it back into Stream, where it will create a transcript, and then you can edit the transcript and make it perfect. So it's not perfect at the moment, but yeah.
Thank you. Another question in here. So for Teams meeting, is there any update on being able to change the meeting organizer?
I'm going to say yes, only because it rings a bell. The ability to reassign ownership of a meeting. Now, it may ring a bell because it's a bit of a frustration with the community that you can't do it, or it may ring a bell because I've seen something that says it's going to be addressed, and apologies, I can't remember which. But you definitely can't do it at the moment. It is a real pain.
Yeah, agreed. I find that as well. Another question from Tom. So in regards to meeting recordings, what if you don't use OneDrive at the moment?
If you don't use OneDrive, I would say that you're limiting your team's experience full stop, because obviously when you share files in private chat and group chat, it needs to use OneDrive. So it's an interesting question, but there's very few organizations I'd meet or speak to that are using Teams but without OneDrive, because OneDrive, a bit like having a calendar, is a bit of a kind of prerequisite for having the full Teams experience. So technically, I don't know the answer to that. What if you don't have OneDrive? But practically, you kind of need OneDrive to be able to use Teams, particularly for group chat.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, James. Yes, I agree, Tom. So yeah, we know the unique situation there, so we get that. Okay, so I think that's all of the questions, and bang on time, exactly 12, James. So yeah, thank you again, and thank you everyone for attending. The webinar recording will be sent out shortly, and if you wouldn't mind filling in that feedback form, we would really appreciate that. So yeah, have a lovely day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.